Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this mentorship session delivered by Careers Now, Food and Beverage Ontario's Workforce Development Initiative. My name is Nicole Gallace and I'm the founder of FoodGrads, as well as a recruitment manager with DeLacy Executive. I'm joined today with KimberLee. I'm going to pass things over shortly to KimberLee to introduce herself because I think she has a fascinating career path and one that will inspire you. But before I do, I just wanted to sort of add that this is going to be a session that's particularly close to my heart. One of the reasons I started FoodGrads back in 2016 was because I definitely saw a gap for young people to explore careers in the food and beverage processing industry. But furthermore, from a personal perspective, felt so strongly that we have so much work to do to make our food nutritious, healthy. And I truly believe that the people that are within the industry, the folks that we can attract to join this industry, will be the change agents, will be the people that make the change in the industry that we need to see. And so I'm excited to hear KimberLee's story. We are going to be focusing on nutrition and fermentation. That's kind of like the focus area. But as always, we have that career path, how we want to hear how KimberLee started in her career and what motivates her, all those wonderful things. And we're going to kind of keep the conversation flowing and organic as usual. So without further ado, welcome, KimberLee. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Nicole. Can you hear and see me okay?
I can, yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. On my side, my screen, I see you. I don't see anything else. So, but that's fine. It's really nice to be here and to share our story because, I've been around a while and the company's been around a while, and it's been quite a journey, especially in the last 10 years, I would say, of the 15 that we've been on this journey. And, the idea of passion to profession is exactly, our story, right? Mm-hmm. I started Healing Spirit Nutrition in 2010. I had graduated from being a holistic nutritionist at Institute of Holistic Nutrition and wanted to take, another career because that would have been like my third career, and wanted to go in a different direction. And having grown up, on a homestead, being very close to the earth, being very close to the food that we grow and consume, and having a real connection, having, a mother being raised in a way that you were always preserving your food, you're always, providing for yourself as much as you could, right, to supplement. And so that really instilled in me a real connection with nature and food and the healing that it brings. And along that journey, so health and well-being had always been something I'd been interested in, all, from childhood all the way through to teenage, and in my life, partly because of family health issues and then my own health issues. They all fed into needing to find my own way of healing. Yeah. And, the idea of using food to heal is, ancient. Plants have been medicine from the dawn of time, and bacteria have been medicine from the dawn of time, so we're not talking about anything new. We're just talking about a renaissance of bringing back tradition, traditional foods, traditional methods of preserving, traditional methods of enhancing nutrition to support our health and well-being, but also to keep shelf life. That's one of the big things about fermentation is it does extends the shelf life, but ultimately it also enhances the nutrition of anything that you're making with it. So how that all comes together is with having chronic digestion issues, that led me, and then going into nutritional training, because when I was looking for another career, that this, was very serendipitous. Everything presented, it was like, I got chills, the light went off, the light bulb of the head went off, and it was like, this is the next direction. But, and then going through, I was working full time, doing studies on a part-time basis, and doing that over, couple of years, the company that I actually was working for while I was doing that was actually a food manufacturer. I have 40 years accounting background, so I was doing that kind of work, but that meant I got to see all aspects of the business come through my desk. So it was very eye-opening in a lot of ways and it didn't necessarily plant the seed, but it definitely gave me an experience about what it takes to get out there. And this was a food manufacturer that was a startup company, that was looking to really ramp up the sales really quick. So they had, a good amount of money to invest to be able to ramp up sales really quickly. And so it was a really, like I say, a very good exposure in those 2 years that I worked there while I was doing my nutrition training. Then in my nutrition training is actually where I got introduced to the using of kefir colony bacteria. But unfortunately, it was milk. And I'd always, the only time I didn't have an issue with milk that I can remember as a kid was being on the farm when it was freshly taken from the cow and not pasteurized, and we consumed it. The jar sitting on the counter with the fat floating on the top, right? Churning the butter, those kinds of things. That's the only time I actually remember that I actually could consume milk and not have any issues. When I got older and, away from, the farm, the homestead, then it was a matter of commercialized milk consumption and always had an issue with it. And then it wasn't until my nutrition training that I could isolate that this is definitely an issue for me. Stop it. Inflammation goes down, all my joints stop swelling. Take just a week off of doing that and then going back, trying it again and having an immediate reaction is like, yep, that's the source, right? That's a really big source. So that's what led to, okay, well, now we know fermentation changes it. Fermentation brings down a lot of the different inflammatory responses the body has to a dairy product, but not for me. So because it wasn't really the lactose that was causing the problem, it was actually the the casein, the protein that's in the crystalline protein that's in the dairy, the milk, that was causing the problem for me. And fermentation muted it, but it didn't solve the problem. Clarification, which is like ghee, is the only dairy product I can use today because of clarifying it, because clarifying takes out, it separates all that out. And then that's fantastic because ghee has actually a lot of good benefits to it. So trying the fermentation with the dairy, okay, that didn't work. Then I went to, okay, maybe it's the animal. Let's go to a goat. Let's try goat's milk,
Yeah.
Reduce inflammation, but still the issue. Then let's try sheep milk. Absolutely delicious, high fat, it's a high fat milk, absolutely delicious, but again, still inflammatory. So therefore, okay, we're going out of the animal kingdom. Let's go into the plant kingdom. And that's where coconut milk kefir was born, right? Was trying that. And through a long process of experimentation, and this is one of the things about if you're, interested in fermentation, is that don't expect to get it right the first time or every time. Because when you're working with live cultures, which is what I work with, they have their own, they're like their own little being themselves, and they need their love and appreciation and special treatment and even environment. It's really amazing through all these years of working with live cultures and seeing how they respond to different environments and even different energies. I've had staff over the years that I wouldn't even let them go near the cultures because the cultures would respond to them in a not a good way. Right. Which would really kind of blows your mind in one way. Like it just opens up a whole new world of looking at a living food. And that's what really the fermented food is about, is a living food that is in harmony, just like we are living, is in harmony with its environment, with the vibration of everything around it, including the people that make it, including the people that consume it. This is why it can be beneficial in ways that you can't even, pinpoint or understand because of that vibrational aspect of food and the healing nature of food. So that's where, once I identified this and did my research on kefir kefir itself, you have to realize this was 2010. We're now 2024. That whole world in the past, I would say 8 years of understanding bacteria and how beneficial and important they are actually to our health and well-being has exploded. So back in 2010, the research I could find identified only 11 different strains of beneficial bacteria in kefir. Right now, and then 10 years later, as more research got on, there was like 46 different beneficial strains of bacteria and yeast that are included in kefir. And kefir is its own specific colony, which is different than a SCOBY that you find in kombucha. They share only a couple of similar ones, but they each have their own different benefits. So a lot of people are always asking about that and curious about that side of it. So with seeing that exchange and growth in the research behind it, this is why, when I was doing it in 2010, it was all about education. I had to educate people, what's kefir? So only if you were, European or Middle East type of culture would you have any familiarity with it, because those were the traditional cultures that were utilizing those kefir for thousands of years. So it was part of their diet long before it hit the Western world. So the introducing it here was like having to educate everybody, about what it is, and then just try it, see if you like it, and just try it, right? And plant-based, there were so many people that I encountered, because when I first started my business, food was the path to open the conversation in nutrition, because as a nutritional consultant, it was, especially starting in 2010, people still weren't quite there about taking control of their own health and really looking at their diet and lifestyle as a way to manage their health. And so it was very hard, to get that consulting, get people in the door for the consulting. But the food side was the way that I approached it and said, hey, here's some good foods that no one's making out there, because I was making the types of foods that I wanted, but was not available anywhere. Right.
And just I have so many questions, but just to interrupt you real quick. What part do you think plays in the fact that our doctors don't really have a lot of training on food as part of a sort of holistic medical treatment plan? You must have heard that 1,000 times, that there's really limited. Yeah, tell me.
I've experienced it personally through my own digestion issues and going through the Western medicine gambit, and there was no help there. No. There was literally no help there. There was diagnostic help. But when you have issues, and that's one of the problems with irritable bowel, is that it's symptom. There's a lot of symptoms, but there's nothing wrong with you. There's like that. Well, we can't find anything. So there's no disease state yet. But that's the big issue, as we know that anything that's affecting the digestion, ultimately left undealt with, will lead into autoimmune or disease. And by the time you get there, it's a lot harder to reverse, but it's a lot easier to reverse when you start having symptoms. And that's really, what led me on my path, really, is when you have issues that you can't get the help you need, you have to become your own doctor, your own, medicine man, medicine woman, and search for those answers. And so I was my own guinea pig. I was trying everything and anything. And this is why when the nutrition training came, when I was looking for that next career and the nutrition training came up, that's why that light bulb went off. It's like, even if anything I glean from this will help me, and then anything, and then I can share that with others. That's what ended up happening is that, and then it turns out there was a lot of others that had the same types of issues and were not able to get any help or assistance through Western medicine. And it's really very unfortunate, but there's a good side that we're seeing now after so many years of, Western trained doctors also now starting to incorporate in functional medicine, incorporating homeopathic, more like what a naturopath does, but with different diagnostics available to them that the naturopath may not have available to them. And so that has opened up. No, I don't see it as much here in the GTA and in our area. It's more US side. I'm seeing a lot more growth on the US side. But that's a good thing, because that means it's opening up, and that hopefully will trickle into the Western model, where recognizing, and especially as the microbiome research really, because it's exploding. So that microbiome research is really going to open up Western medicine's eyes, and to that more education is needed on that side. But it's such a archaic system, seeing change in that way, I still really, ultimately, it really comes down, we are our own best doctor. Right? We have the ability, the knowledge, the information is there, it's out there. It's like having guidance, that's one of the things of my life has allowed a lot of training, and because I've had a lot of issues that I've had to overcome and still work on to this day, because it's a never ending, really your health is your health is the only thing that you have. And if you work too hard, I attest to that. You work too hard, you have too much stress, you don't eat the good foods, you don't get the right sleep, like getting out in nature, like we know all these types of things support our health in general, but they are not anything that is being taught in medicine, in the medicine field. And even in the natural field, there are more people specializing in these types of areas versus trying to put an umbrella on all of it and recognize that it's all tied together. And ultimately it is. And this is why it can be challenging for people to be their own doctor. But the advocacy is they've got to be there for themselves. They do. It's not giving your power away to somebody else to say, please fix me, or give me a pill to fix me. That's that old world. That's the world I grew up in. But that world is gone now. Truly.
And there's so much information out there. And I think that's one of the problems. Two things. Our lifestyles now with work is pushing us more to convenience food. And that was going to be something that, I was going to ask more about. Again, one of the reasons I started FoodGrads, and wanting more people to care and have a conscience about what's in our food, that I feel like for a long time there, you were made to feel guilty to shop in the middle aisles of the grocery store. There was definitely that feeling of, you do need to go to the farmer's market, pick the local food, the organic food. But then, you had a huge number of people that, like myself, 15 years ago, had young kids, driving them around everywhere, busy lifestyle, trying to do my job, trying to feed my kids, feeling guilty that I'm not feeding them healthy food because I'm buying them the food that the food and beverage manufacturers provide to the grocery stores. So there's that guilt there as well, which I think is a tough one. Which again is why we need to improve our food system.
Absolutely, and that is changing. And in a really good way, from my perspective, what I see, because I personally am out there looking for alternatives intentionally, because I want clean labels. When I created my business, it was about clean labels. It was about getting rid of all the unnecessary things. The challenge in the health, from Health Canada perspective, from food safety perspective, is that lack of understanding of food safety from a health perspective. It's easy. That middle aisle is dead food, right? All middle aisle is dead food. And that's why it's there, because from a food safety point of view, dead food is probably the safest food, right? But we know it's safe for staying on the shelf. That's the only place it's safe. It's safe nowhere else, because it's a toxic bomb to us as a living organism that feeds off of living organism, right? And living organisms is real whole food, right? Not prepackaged and processed. And yes, that's the challenge in our modern go world. But this is the challenge, because we need to make that change. we need to slow this pace so that we can feed our kids nutritiously, because their future health depends on it. Ultimately, their future health and our future health. And I'm talking physical well-being, emotional well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being overall, because it is all about how we are interacting in the world. And if we are so busy that we're not slowing down enough to recognize our own emotions or recognize what's going on in our environment, and we just are, letting things fly by us, we're actually not really here. We're somewhere else. We're not actually here, right where we need to be able to experience life in its fullest. We're living in the future, and therefore that's not the fullest. You'll never be satisfied there, living in the future. So the convenience factor and clean foods, this is where we're seeing a lot more of that coming to the market. A lot of this alternative type of, taking the leftovers of juicing and taking those fibers and turning them into, fruit leather or, healthy fiber food kind of idea, prebiotic almost. So we're seeing this kind of change happening. And that's what's really exciting about the food industry and beverage industry too, because now beverage industry is starting to add in nutritive, supportive, herbal as well as nutrition into a beverage. So when you're drinking, it was like, drink your 8 glasses of water. Well, if you don't like the taste of water, well, then how do you get your 8 glasses of water, right? You start adding your cucumber. Common, that was a big rave, for a while. There was lemon or cucumber slices in your water all the time. Well, even that was like too much. So we have to really find our own way to how do we make little steps. And this is one of the things that when I consult with people is I really try to break it down to like, just try this one little thing and incorporate it in, because every little step you make is in the right direction. And it's not about perfection. It's not about 100%. It's about just doing a step every day if you can. And changing your perspective about food as medicine versus food is just something to fill me up so my growlies stop happening, right? If you don't fuel properly, you're not going to have energy to keep that busy lifestyle. And we can only run, and I can attest to this because I went through a nervous system crash that attested to that go. And I was doing a lot of good things. I would have crashed a lot sooner if I had not been supporting with a lot of good nutrition in there. I know I would have crashed sooner, but it was a combination factor. But that whole go, when at some point, the body can just say no. And then you're done. And so that's where, and it's a lot harder to come back from that after you've crashed. It's a lot easier to start backing off and support, the demands that are being placed on you to get to maintain your energy and to fuel the body correctly, so it doesn't go through that crash. But that's the nature of stress and our fast-paced society. This is why it's extremely disruptive to the microbiome, and it literally changes your body's chemistry. So, having that support through your food and lifestyle is really critical.
Can you break that down, microbiome? You've mentioned that a few times. Just for anybody that's listening that doesn't understand exactly what you mean by that.
Well, your microbiome, we have actually several microbiome. When I kind of refer to it, I'm thinking more of the internal, the gut microbiome. But our skin is its own microbiome, because the funny fact is we're actually more bacteria than we are cells. So we are a walking, microbiome. Really, we're a biome, a field of bacteria existing, but not just bacteria as well. There's bacteria, there's yeast, there's parasites, but we're like this little ecosystem, and that ecosystem is on us, it's in us, and then we're made of it. So if you think of yourself from that perspective, all of a sudden, the way you interact with your food, with the world and your environment, you can see the importance of having a sterile environment is actually very counterproductive to your health and well-being, right? We need exposure to dirt. We need exposure to, in order to keep our immune system strong. And so our what that composition of our bacteria, yeasts, and parasites is, that relationship that they have, that's that microbiome. And that microbiome is affected by many things. And the intestinal one is, 70% of your immune system is in your gut. Right? And that gut is that immune system that's being referred to. The biggest component of that would be the bacteria, and when I say bacteria, I mean like everything from the parasites to the yeast to the bacteria. All of that are that whole microbiome.
And so you've been doing this for 25 years since you started the learnings and supporting other people. What would you say are the most common complaints that you see, the most common reasons people are walking through your door? And have you seen a change in the complaints over the last, say 20 years?
Interesting. Yeah. In 2010, when I started my business and really opened that conversation, I would say constipation was number one, right? And allergies. Allergies were very prevalent at that time too. And when I say allergies, I'm not saying necessarily anaphylactic type of allergies, more of just understanding that certain foods would cause rashes, or certain foods would cause a reaction of some sort, but not necessarily an anaphylactic type of, because that's really your true allergy, is your anaphylactic. Versus food sensitivities. And those are all, those are all signs of a disruption in the microbiome, of a dysbiosis in the microbiome. You've got an imbalance in the good and the bad, volumes, so to speak. And over time, I would say it has not really changed, as far as those are still probably the most common, but what has come in now is more of the mood, more the mental health aspect. And it's not surprising, because one leads to the other. When you have that, when you have a dysbiosis in the gut, you're going to have disruption in neurotransmitter production. Neurotransmitters regulate all functions in the body, brain, mind, everything. So it's not surprising that and this is where I say, when you have digestion issues that are not addressed over time, there is a line that you can literally see, this is what you started with. 10 years later, this is what developed. Another 10 years later, this is the next thing that developed. Another 10 years later, oh, here I am. 20 years later, now I've got autoimmune. I've got thyroid, I've got, thyroid disruption, or I've got gallbladder, issues, because gallbladder kind of feeds into that. But yeah, you can see that, how that leads to it, right? And this is the importance of getting that education out there for people to recognize that, your body's talking to you every time that it gives you a symptom. It is talking to you. It's not a random thing. This is a real thing that needs to be addressed. And that's a great place to start. When you're young, you start seeing these things, don't ignore them, right? Definitely start addressing them. So, because they will take you down later on if you don't.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely going to make my kids listen to this episode, because I feel like a broken record with my kids, because and also this our FoodGrads audience in particular is sort of 18 to 24-year-olds, and I know the Careers Now audience is a little larger, with job seekers as well that are interested in the industry. But I think educating when you're young is key. I often say to my kids, it's not necessarily what you are putting in your body that matters, but it's what you're not putting in. So, okay, you're going to eat some, bad food here and there. You're young, you're on the move. This is going to be part of what you do. But what about the carrots and the blueberries and the broccoli and I'm constantly, trying to get them to put the healthy foods in their body too. So what advice what would be the top 3 pieces of advice you'd give to a young person that maybe thinks they're invincible and isn't listening to their body at this point?
Get grounded. Get out in nature. Get out in nature. Because until you can connect, if you don't respect your physical being, right, you're going to just use and abuse your body. And when you're younger, you feel pretty invincible, so you're kind of like, well, I can, my body can handle this for a while. It can handle this for a while, and I'll just put it off. I'll put it off. But this is a time when you have, in this time of your life, you have the biggest opportunity to optimize your health and well-being for the future. So if you're someone who wants longevity, if you're someone who wants not to walk the path of dementia or Alzheimer's or any kind of brain neurodegenerative disease, then that's the time to actually build the foundation, is in this time period of your life, because this is the easiest time to do it, not later after the abuse that you've put on your body catches up with you and you start feeling more issues come up. It's harder to reverse that, where this is a really key time to really focus on your health and well-being. And so if you're feeling like you're not listening to the body, then you need to address the spiritual side. That's really what we're getting out in nature and starting to slow down the pace so that you get back in the body. Because quite often there's quite a disconnect. I went through a period of time myself that way, and I can understand how it happens and what's needed to bring you back into that. This is why in my treatment modalities, I bring in a lot of different things, and this is why healing spirit, why the umbrella of healing spirit is, because we're all spirits needing healing, because that is the nature of being human. And at the same time, we all have the capability to heal. So we are all healing spirits as well. So that ability to bring those two together is to recognize that within yourself, and to start on yourself as your greatest teacher. Your body will be your greatest teacher. Your body will be the thing that will guide you to what is best for you, and have you live your unique self, your unique authentic self, instead of what everybody else thinks you should be doing. And that's a real hard. I've had to do gluten-free, dairy-free, for a long time, long before it was even available. And that's, again, part of why I started with the food products I did, because they weren't available. And what was available was like eating cardboard. So it was like, not palatable at all. So I can understand how difficult it is to be that lone wolf, feel like that lone wolf, because you're making choices for you personally that may not match your friends, that may not match the group, even your family, and I know that path, I know that struggle. But I highly recommend that because by doing so, by honoring what your body is telling you at this point in time, that you will be the one that your family will come to, because you were the one who broke away and learned what you needed to learn to heal yourself. And by doing that, you will later be able to heal those that weren't supportive of you, at that time period. So it comes full circle. Right?
Yeah, that's so true. A lot of the people that are going to be listening today or watching this at a later date are interested in this space because they want to become a food scientist, or they're on that journey, or product developer. What would you? I've got a couple of questions here. So, what do you think the current food producers are doing? What are your favorite products that you're seeing that on the market right now? And also, what can somebody? So it's twofold. What can somebody that's maybe new to an organization or just getting started in their career, but have your kind of see the world the way you do, and are very passionate about putting good products, healthy products into the world, but are maybe going to do it through joining an organization that's existing rather than starting their own company like you did. What advice would you give to them? So I know that's twofold. What's your favorite products, and what advice would you give a newbie product developer that's joining a company?
I can't say I have a favorite product because it changes all the time. I like, I like to keep that variety, so it changes all the time. So I'm sorry, I can't really name one because
That's fine.
nothing really comes to my mind off the top of my head. The mushroom world is really exploding, and so I do like seeing those kinds of things being added to your drinks because of the cognitive benefits and the overall immune system benefits. And we are living in we're living in a way that our immune system is being greatly challenged. And so things that really support the immune system and the brain and that's where your mushrooms cover both gambits. That's where, so that's an area of growth I think is definitely we'll see more and more and more of that because the research has been there for quite a while, but now the technologies are catching up with the research to be able to manipulate the actual and not just manipulate the actual like mushrooms themselves, but extract, to really take out the extracts, to take out those key nutrients. I'm always cautious because whole food, nature created perfection in wholeness. Extracts, isolates, there's a lot of research in, the pharmaceutical industry, the chemistry industry really likes to go down that path. But the more we can, because we don't know everything, we don't have the technology to know everything about why is it more beneficial to eat, a whole apple versus just taking out pectin of an apple, or just taking out the vitamin C of an apple, or the fiber of an apple, right? We can do all of that, right, in our current food systems, but there's something about that whole apple, and there's something about that whole apple that was grown on this particular piece of land versus an apple that was grown on this particular land, right? This is where, we'll never be able to explore that to know. So going back into a more whole food approach is where I would like to see, a lot more development in versus extract, pulling out the pieces and then making claims based on as if you were eating the whole food. Right, because that's where a lot of the research is based on that whole food. But yet, we'll take an extract, but because we're using the extract of that whole food, we can say these certain things. No, like that's where we get really led. We really get misled and led astray. So that's where a focus I would like to see. And the second part was what
advice to product developers that are just starting. Yeah.
Think outside of the box. What do you need? Get to know yourself and what your needs are, and look out in the market. Is it available? Can you find it? Is it and if you find it, is it really niche? Is it just one person? I started this business with an idea, right? I was introduced to these cultures. I loved playing with these cultures. So because I grew up playing with my food. I always liked to enhance or manipulate or change. I was a baker, so you always were playing with things. And that whole idea of taking something and going, well, okay, well, what if I take these cultures and I use coconut milk? No one's done that, right? Like, okay, let's do the coconut milk and see what it does. And then go through that whole gambit of experimentation. I was months of experimentation with it. And it took years to really create the product that we have today. It took years to really get that fermentation process honed in. So it only by thinking outside the box and being curious about what's going on. This is where, I would have, maybe if I had been introduced it sooner, gone down into that path of microbiology and into the chemistry and the science of it, because working in that field, you can get too far into the rabbit hole and too far into the details where you don't get to see the bigger picture. So this, again, getting outside of that box, instead of staying too focused in, getting outside that box and thinking on a broader scale of application, and not taking your two favorite things and putting them together. Right.
And would you say that it's a case of what works for one person might not work for somebody else? So it truly is trial and error. Everybody is different.
That's right. Our thought processes, our approaches to things, everything is different. And so someone else, oh yeah, I tried that and failed. Well, if it still interests you, pursue it. Because truly your passion is the thing that will keep driving you. Your passion is the thing. So your passion are the things that light you up. Your passion are the things that, it was fascinating to me. It became really fascinating. Oh, let's see what are my babies doing today?
Mm-hmm.
It's like going in and saying, how are you today? And what are you doing? And then let's tweak this and let's tweak that and see what the end result is. And then, evolve with them as I evolved in the processes and the experimentation. And through experimentation, I was always good at finding a recipe and or looking through a recipe because I had been doing it, long enough and making modifications and tweaking and always experimenting that I could look at a recipe and go, yeah, okay, this is good. Ratios look good. I'll change this, take this out and put in something cleaner, put in a different flour or putting in a different ingredient that would boost its fiber content or make it, higher in specific nutrients, right? Is being able to do that. That just comes with experience. That just comes from always being curious about what will happen if I do this, what will happen if I do that, and trying it. So you become, it's like every project is a science project. You're always just making little tweaks and seeing what the end result is. And it's a labor of love because really it's the curiosity that gets me. And that's what has sustained me all these years is I'm still curious. I still am really curious about how these little changes impact the outcome.
I have a couple of questions. I know I had a lot of questions which I haven't hardly touched on because I'm just so fascinated with this. But I would be remiss if I did not ask our podcast host Veronica, who is a current PhD candidate food scientist. She has a couple of questions that she said you have to ask KimberLee these two questions. So I'm going to ask you, hopefully you don't mind. How do you rebound from an attempt at something that didn't quite work out for you? Because it just reminded me to ask that because you mentioned, keep trying, things don't always work out. So how do you personally rebound? Because it can be very frustrating, I'm sure.
Absolutely. But again, I think for me, what has always worked is curiosity. And really you dig into the details, right? You really dig into the details. So it could be one slight little change that could make that difference, that turns the tide. When you get to a point where you're frustrated, then that's kind of a time to step back and go, let's just pretend we didn't know anything and try a completely different approach. What if we went 360 on our approach? Right? This is how we've been doing it. We're not getting anywhere. Turn around and go, okay, I'm going to go off in this completely different random direction because you'll get a result that will educate you about the original path that you went on and what could be happening in this alternative path could be what is needed is slight little variation that actually is the path that had been working and just stopped working. It's just making that little variation.
So true. Perseverance, right? And that you say that pure curiosity to keep going. The second question, what does your process look like when you are tackling a new problem? Fermentation is very much an art and a science. That was the second
Absolutely.
question. So,
yeah, absolutely. So this is where fermentation, I don't know if you can ever say someone's a master of fermentation because when you're working with living cultures, every day is different. Just like it is for you, it is for them too. So it's providing them that nutrient, providing them that consistency. That's what I found was the biggest thing was consistency with, just like with us, we eat, 3 meals a day or 6, whatever our body tells us we need. And if we miss those meals, we get cranky or we feel fatigued. Working with living cultures, it's the same idea. They need that same consistency of feeding in order to stay robust and to produce it with a consistent pattern. So that is one. light that was shown basically through this trial and error experimentation.
We are getting close to 2 o'clock, and I like to keep things tight because I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're really busy. We can hear in the background lots of things going on there. Tell us about your team and what's going on over at Healing Spirit. Anything you want to share, that what you're currently working on, anything like that, feel free to use the next few minutes to kind of tell us a little bit more about what's going on in your world.
Well, in our world, I have a fantastic team. I'm really fortunate to have had people with me for many years now. And so that's that consistency that allows us to produce a quality product consistently and to meet the demands of the rise and the fall of the demands in our current economy. I am working on a new product in development, which is a lengthy process because a lot of lab testing, this is part of that idea of when you're tweaking along the way, you do have to throw in some, lab testing in there to see what that result is, if it's still keeping within the parameters of food safety as well. So that I am working on a project there. I'm not going to put it out bad because you don't want to jinx it or anything. I did introduce, I did bring back my fermented cashew spread because that was one that I had to go through the shelf life study on. So I had to take it off the market for a while just to prove that it's, exactly as it was. And so that's been a fun one to have back. That's a kind of like your cheese alternative versus, non-dairy, nut-based, but being sprouted as well as fermented. It's the most bioavailable and digestible type of way to have any kind of nut. I am working on the sprouted side of it because that's, again, another growing microgreens as well as having more sprouted and also the raw living type of food. Which is close to nature, but in a more convenient way, because that's really an area that I've always been passionate about and that I do the best. Like, my health is the best when I'm eating more that way. And so a lot of people need to really understand the benefits of that, because when we want dense food and we want it convenient, when you want healthy food, that means you want dense food because and convenience, bring those two together. You don't have to eat as much and you can have it in a format that you can take with you and be on the go. And yet get sustained by the energy and not worry about something spoiling, keeping it refrigerated and things like that. So, and getting classes going again. It's something I've always loved doing as well, was to teach fermentation, to teach health and nutrition, lifestyle, all that kind of idea.
What's the best way people can reach you? Because I guarantee you've inspired a lot of people, not just through the products that you're working on, but maybe, some food scientists out there that would love to connect with you and learn from you. How can they reach you?
I'm reachable by email or by cell phone. 905-626-1336 is my cell. And that does come directly to me. So I still answer our company phone because, it's the customer service person in me who always loves talking directly with my customers. That's been, a great part of our success is because of that connection that I have with our customers. And my email is my name, KimberLee Schaumburg @gmail.com.
That's awesome. I guarantee you that Veronica will listen to this and we'll be bugging you to do a podcast interview for our audience because they're much more in-depth, questions more around the actual products themselves. So I think you guys would have an amazing, different conversation. And to add, to complement what we talked about today, because I feel like we could do another hour, but we have to end it here. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. We are happy to answer any questions that you might have even afterwards. Our contact information is available where you're watching this video. And KimberLee, thank you so much for your time today. Again, we couldn't inspire the next generation. We couldn't do these mentorship sessions without people like yourself taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to our audience. So we're so appreciative. Thank you so much.
Thank you too, Nicole. It's very, very a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to share our journey, and wish the best for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.